Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've done an update, and I just thought I would actually show how I'm progressing on my Iroquois Mohawks by Minute Miniatures, and also just show some books that I've picked up. I've kind of collected these over, I say, the last month or so, both spanning historical and fantasy stuff. But I thought I'd chat about that after. And so I haven't done a video in a while, so Happy New Year to everyone. I hope the end of the holiday season ended nicely. Almost everybody universally says it was quiet this year, just given the nature of things. But I hope it was a good quiet and not a stir-crazy cabin fever quiet. I enjoyed the holidays, so it was good. And yeah, so I didn't really do a lot of hobbying over the holidays, but I have steadily been trying to finish these Mohawks, and I'm kind of getting that stage where I'm really starting to enjoy them, getting the base paint on, and now I'm actually up to where I'm going to be doing the eyes next, which I'll talk about that in a moment. But the face paint wasn't really, it is an area that has been really fun and interesting to do for these ones, because I didn't really do a lot of tattoos or face painting on my prior Woodland Indians. I have a couple of those. I don't have my Iroquois that I should show as comparison, but I do have some other ones that other Woodland Indians I can show for comparison here in a moment, just because they're in my display cabinet right here. I am going to do tattoos, I believe, on some of them, but I'm going to wait to do that after I finish the skin. I've only done one highlight, glazing, like sort of on the skin, bringing it from the original, and I haven't done any highlighting on the face paint yet, because I only have the base color down on the face paint. And so I'll show these in a little closer. First, I'm just going to back up a moment, just show the group. So that's a fair number. You know, when I first started this, I thought I was only probably doing like 10 or 15, but you add this up, it's, I think it's 26 miniatures, so it's kind of getting up there, you know, as far as doing a unit. And this will never be used as a unit, most likely, you know, together, like one big unit, but it's, yeah, it's been a little more sizable than I initially thought it was going to be when I started it. It's kind of funny, I can count, but I just grab stuff out of a box and get going. I just didn't really even think about it. This is the unit of 8 that are the firing unit. And this guy, because I have him on the left here, you can't see him very well, but I might use him as an example to show the black. So I'm using, I did some of them, I had to decide how I was going to do the face paint, and for some of them, I did like the whole entire face as a color, and for some I did half. For some I did the rectangular block I talked about on the previous video, just across the eyes and around the head. And then for the leader I even did like half on the bottom of both colors, because I've seen that too, where there's black lines through red. And so I did try to mix it up across all of the different Iroquois. And then I left some without, just to give that variety, which I think is always, I always think variety looks more realistic in many cases. And so here we go, you can see like his whole face is red here on the bottom, this one firing, and then the one in the back has black just on the top. I have one there with the band on the eyes. Now I haven't painted the eyes yet, and the eyes are actually exceptionally small on these ones, and they are always with this particular sculptor. I mean, and I have had really good success, you know, in painting eyes. I am going to attempt to paint the eyes for these, and so that's kind of my next step. As far as highlighting, the only thing that I think I'm going to do a little differently than I normally do in highlighting these colors for the face paint is I think I'm going to use a little blue in the black for the black on the face. And reason being is I think that I typically use gray, and I like gray to show highlighting within black. It's just a natural thing to do. But sometimes I think certain things in nature oftentimes give a blue sheen when they're black and they're highlighted, and depending on what it is. And I really think that a hint, just a slight hint in the highlight of blue on the black face paint might look better in this case. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And that isn't just going to be like total blue. It's just going to be like a hint of it mixed in with the black. And I'll just kind of just go through here. This is the leader here, and he's not really in focus because I've got so much behind him, but I'll try to show that. And because it's the lighting here, I think you can maybe see. Let me just... I basically did red with black lines going through it for the leader, for the face paint, for him. And I did that for his riding pose as well. A little easier to see there. So I'll just put them aside so I don't have everything else out of focus. So I like the mixture of the face paint here. As I said, these are really just primarily base coated, other than just one highlight on the skin, glazing on the skin. And I did, as you can see here, I'm doing some designs on some of the cloth, just adding variety in the way they look. One thing I really didn't mention is that I've really incorporated a lot of black and red, like I said in the first videos, in these miniatures to represent Mohawks, because they are known for that. And so I am hoping that that sort of stands out a little bit more. I think the black leggings really makes it stand out because that's just such a large area to have dark. The eyes, I'll just show, maybe I'll try to show a good miniature to show those. Let's see. I will get this into focus. The eyes are really small. I think a lot of people could get away with not doing them. They did sculpt in, I almost think they sculpt in a pupil in some ways on this, because it's so small within the eye. It's not really an eyeball, it's like a dot in the eyeball. And so what I'm planning on doing is painting white, just in the corners of the eyes there, and then just dabbing that pupil with a black dot, because I think that's going to be the best way to capture it. Because they really do stand out, those pupils. Like, oftentimes an eye, when sculpted, will just be sort of a shallow, protruding, elliptical, like kind of piece of clay that you can just make white and then just put your dot on. These are a bit different in the way I see them there. And so I'm going to attempt that. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I'll do the eyes next, and before I get too heavy into highlighting the face, because I don't want to have to do that all over again. And for any of you that like to paint eyes, you'll know that, at least in my experience, I think I do a pretty halfway decent job with them, but it's still a trial and error thing. And usually if I do 10 miniatures and I do the eyes, even up to 3 of them sometimes can require some fair bit of touch-up. Yeah. So, with books, I'm just going to move these miniatures back and raise the camera for a moment. One thing I forgot to do is I didn't pull out those miniatures I was going to show real quick of my finished miniatures I've done in the past. These were painted up with some to be Ottawa natives, not Iroquois. And I guess just to show some of the apparent differences in design choice that I went with, you can see these are just random examples I added real quick. You can see how I went primarily with sort of like beige tan, mostly beige I would say, leggings. And I did that almost universally with my Iroquois too, which is very different than what you typically see for them. It's not that you can't see this color, and I've used some as brown, like this one here I've seen, but I've also used black and red in the leggings now. And so I think I painted these ones up just a little more generic in the past, and I think they came out nice. And as a matter of fact, for those of you that have these miniatures too, I really do like these Warlord miniatures. They're very expressive, and almost every face is different, and they're really nice. And so, but now this time with the Minden and then the Krantera Hurons, I'm going to try to mix in some different styles to the jewelry and the clothing that is based on research, and so I think it ends up making them look quite a bit different in a lot of ways. So, all right, so back to the books. So starting with the historical books, or this, I should say, a historical book. I ordered this in December. I wanted something I've just to be a little more accurate than what I'm finding online, or supportive of what I'm finding online in the past of British uniforms. And while I don't think this will necessarily help me, because I've looked it up with my Rangers that I'll be doing coming up after these, and those are the Krantera Rangers, I did think it would probably help me a lot in the Grenadiers that I'll be doing, and for the British going forward, and as well as other things like even the officers, and perhaps to just take a look back at some of the hats on some of the models I've completed in the past, just to see if I wanted to change them at all, just to help going forward with all the uniforms. Now, this is British Army uniforms 1751 to 1783, so it does cover French-Indian War, and it actually is written by Carl Franklin. To give you an example, I'm just going to randomly kind of open this up here. I'll just find a typical spot. Like, these are the kind of typical pages you get. I mean, there is forwards and descriptions, lots of info, and this is nothing really for you to see on video here, but there's lots of info talking about all the facings and different dates and all the different uniforms. But what I really do like are some of these displays. What they do is they'll show, like let's say this one's the 5th Regiment of Foot, and it'll have the private soldiers and officers dress over different date ranges, and so they have everything from 1755 here, and then it goes up to, let's say, 1785 up here, and so you can get just some of the subtleties, you know, if you wanted to do that. And then as well, I think what I like even better is like they'll show like close-ups of like the Grenadiers mitre cap, and so even things like, I don't think I'd ever get to the detail of the breastplates and things of the officers, but some of this stuff, and they'll show the lace. It was really helpful. Like company info on their caps and the officers' caps as well, which is really neat. And so they show that, you know, and you can go through all the different regiments, and they even have like Highlanders and stuff. So while they don't necessarily have the Rangers, and I think when I looked into it, part of that is, if I remember correct, and you guys know on the channel I'm not I'm not a historian's historian, but I believe the Rangers were actually a colony's. They were actually like Robert's Rangers. When I quickly looked at it, I believe they were raised by the colony, not, they weren't technically a regiment of the actual of Britain, and so that's why they wouldn't be in here, as I understand it. And like in here, some of the fur caps for the grenadiers and stuff. This is the 43rd Regiment of Foot are listed, and so this book is pretty cool, actually. Like here, example of Highlander tartans of the Highland regiments. It's just, there's lots of info. Just flipping through here. We have like cavalry info. I'm probably not going to do the book justice as far as saying everything it has, just because I haven't read through it yet. Here's swords, but it has, you know, guns. It has lots of info. In some cases, way more than I would actually need. But yeah, pretty cool, actually. I don't have that many historical references on uniforms, and so this is sort of like the beginning of me starting to get some. I've mostly used online stuff, to be honest. I've gotten away with it pretty good. Now this book I'm going to show first is one I've already shown, but it's just leading into why I've purchased the next books. I've shown this on the channel already. This is one of the books I brought with me over the holidays when I wasn't going to have any internet access. You know, just to be able to, when we were spending time with family, to be able to read at the end of the day and stuff. And I have to tell you, you know, because I'm getting into, I really enjoyed our last Oldtimer Challenge, and I'm really getting into painting the fantasy stuff. Trying to paint it like the older style sort of designs. And I just found, in general, it's so relaxing to just pick up a book like this and go through and watch somebody's discussion, like on how they painted something. And the funny thing is a lot of this stuff are written for complete beginners. Now, there's lots of cool tricks written like 30 plus years ago in these books that they're teaching people. You know, when trying to get into the inspiration of painting retro, you know, like painting an older style where materials that you had were different, and so techniques were slightly different to adapt to that. You learn things too, which I think was great. But I just found, like, at the end of the day, reading through like an example of painting these things just to be really fun, and just really, it's nostalgic, it's fun, and it's relaxing, and it's sort of educational, like all wrapped in one. And so I read through this one and I really enjoyed it. Everybody that says that this is a great book for those that are into Old Hammer and stuff are totally true. Like, I think this is a great book. And so one of the things that I purchased as a follow-up is this one here, and that's Warhammer Armies, the Painting Guide. It's also the Heavy Metal or Heavy Metal series, and it has a lot of similarities to the other one. There's going to be differences, you know, it's a different book, but it actually has lots of examples too, and you know, it goes through some specific armies. And one of the things in particular, and I haven't read through this yet, but one of the things that I really like the most about the book is there's a lot of time spent on High Elves. And part of that is, for those of you, I haven't shown it yet, but I purchased a large High Elf lot of Old Hammer and Middle Hammer miniatures, and that's going to be sort of my next army that I'm likely going to work on after Beastmen. And one of my goals for this year is to get started with this. And so even if it's just one unit, because I still want to finish a lot of my Beastmen, I want to get started. And so I am looking at doing sort of a probably a 4th edition era painting style for that army. I'll just show it up close here. This sort of style. And so, yeah, I really love looking through this. So that's the reason why I kind of picked this one up, is to basically use it for painting my future armies, but I'm also just really finding this fun to read and enjoyable to read for the reasons that I mentioned. And so much the same, for that reason, I picked up something a little different, and that is, this isn't GW, but I picked up the Foundry Miniatures Painting and Modeling Guide. Now, I don't use Foundry paints. I know a lot of people that watch my channel, and particularly people that are into historicals. I know many of them that use the Foundry painting method. I actually do use Coat d'Arms paints, which are made by the same company, to my knowledge, that makes Foundry's paints. They're in the same pot. I'll just show it here. You know, these are basically fantasy paints. They're meant to match older versions of Citadel's earlier paint lines. I have a video where there's a lot of opinions on that, because GW did change their paint lines, you know, and so which one it's meant to emulate, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily for a lot of debate. I mean, there's just people that provided the info on that video, but in any event, I believe Foundry paints are still made in these pots, and I believe they're still made by the same company that makes these paints. And this says manufactured by HMG Paints, which I believe at one point at least made the Foundry paints. And if I'm correct, I think they made the Privateer press paints too. If I'm correct on that, the P3 paints. So I got this book mainly because I'm just enjoying so much reading about painting. I don't know if it's the COVID situation and how we're spending, like, many of us always spent more time at our hobby desks, but we're spending tremendous amounts of time at our hobby desks. But I just find, I've always found the painting to be like one of the more relaxing parts of the hobby. This is a cover to cover, trying to cram in as much as they can cram in about teaching you how to paint. From beginning to end. I mean, here it's just even talking about painting posture. But for any of you that have read painting books, I mean, this is going to, you know, basically touch on a lot of the things that we would expect a painting book to touch on. In the Foundry painting system, they do sort of stage. You know, we oftentimes will talk about tabletop standard, you know, as a way of painting versus other ways of painting that add more and more levels, you know, within the GW sort of systems. But they have like the one color method where, you know, they're talking about less highlighting, but like teaching you how to get started in that way. And then later on, like, it'll go into adding the two color method, and then, like, you know, they'll keep doing that. And then they have the three color method. And so, and they sell their paints in triads. And I oftentimes even stage my projects with non-Foundry paints using triads of my own. And so it kind of makes sense. But I really just, like I said, I really enjoy literature that teaches you how to paint, because I think in some ways it reaffirms what you're doing yourself and can add little twists on what you're doing when you see how other people do it. And I guess in some ways, if you really like to paint miniatures, it's sort of like for somebody that's into anything, like let's say you're into space, well, or just some activity like rocketry. Well, you might know how to, like, shoot your rockets, you know, and do all that stuff, but you may still like to read about other people talking about it because it's just what you enjoy. And so I'm starting to really enjoy reading painting books more because I enjoy painting so much. Some of the pictures in here are really awesome too. Like, I was just looking at these here, these Vikings. I've always liked the Foundry Vikings. And so, let's see if I can show better. Get that better into view. But some of the photography in the book's really great for inspiration. And two of the areas, I mean, they're Vikings and they're Wild West, which is on the other page, are other great areas where they have photos of all their stuff finished. This book can be quite pricey to find. I actually got it on eBay for a good price, and this is not their latest book. I didn't really feel like I needed their latest book and to have to go buy it brand new and buy the latest one, like to get what I wanted out of this. Like really, I just saw this for a good deal and picked it up. This is a whole different section just on horses, which is really cool. And they're actually showing horses with like animal skins on them, where people would be using that as sort of a makeshift saddle. They even have sections on conversions. So it's painting, but they're talking about conversions as well. Buildings. Sorry, I'm hitting the front of my camera with the book. And so, yeah, I'm not really recommending this book at this point because I haven't read it, but I thought I'd just show that because it's actually kind of a neat thing I picked up. So lots of cool reading, particularly when we have a little spot that we get away to on the weekends and the holidays and stuff, the family, and we purposely don't have television there, and we have limited access to Wi-Fi, but definitely no direct internet with a router, and so we don't really do that much as far as electronics go. When we're there, we play board games and cook and hang out, listen to music. But I do at the end of the day sometimes like to pull out a book while I'm there, and I find I read a lot less at this point in my life than I used to. And going there I found is a good opportunity to grab something that I say I want to read that I never get to. And so yeah, just thought I'd show those things. And I hope again that you guys your 2021 is starting well, and I will talk to you later.